Can you hear me? Yep, great. It's really great to especially see a technical mayor of a city. That's really neat. So I think Phoenix is quite lucky to have Mayor Gallego. Well, this is the fireside chat with no fire. You know, it's warm enough in Phoenix as it is.
Yeah.
But
the AC chat.
That's right. So David Anderman has had an incredible career, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but just to focus on three things. First of all, in the entertainment industry, and by the way, I have a movie script.
Yeah, right.
But he was the chief operating officer and general counsel of Lucas Entertainment, and negotiated the acquisition of Lucasfilms by the Walt Disney Company. So that's career one. Career two, he worked for a small little rocket company you might have heard of, SpaceX, I think, where he was the general counsel. And then now he is the co-founder and general partner of Stellar Ventures, a fund for early stage innovation. By the way, I have a startup I want to talk to you about too.
Yeah, right. Scripts and startups.
Scripts and startups. That's it. But without any further ado, let me ask you the first question here. Is I guess this is probably what everybody's. How does one get money from a venture fund? but that's what a lot of people are interested in. But feel free to expand on that and on sort of the challenges and opportunities with venture funds.
Yeah, no doubt. And thanks so much, General Worden. You know, this guy's a legend in the aerospace industry, so I'm privileged to be sitting here and be introduced by him and sit on the same stage. Venture investing is sort of new for me, although I've been exposed to it for most of my career. I came out of Silicon Valley originally. Running a venture fund for early stage space companies is pretty fun, right? It's pretty cool because we're doing amazing things. And a lot of that is happening right here in Arizona. I just yesterday went and visited one of our portfolio companies called Celestial. They are building basically solar cells for spacecraft and for satellites. And they're amazing technology, super thin. They're flexible. They're able to be used on both spacecraft, on satellites, on the moon, all off the solar system. And they can't build capacity fast enough. They just built a new manufacturing facility just south of here within the city. And it's a huge opportunity for them. But it kind of points the way of the types of companies we look for. There's a lot of people coming out of the SpaceX mafia. You know, SpaceX is now the most valuable private company in the entire world. And a lot of the employees there have made money and are now spinning out and creating their own companies. Some of them are here, but they're all over the country. And they're moving at lightning pace. I've worked for a lot of different companies. I worked for George Lucas. I've worked for Elon Musk. I've worked for startups. I've worked for small companies and software. Going to SpaceX, you've never seen a company move that fast. You've never seen any group of people move that fast. I used to, my assistant who's here can tell you, my office, I was one of the two offices in all of SpaceX. Elon and Gwynne Shotwell worked in cubes. I had an office along with the CFO because we needed some confidential stuff. I couldn't step out of my office door without worrying that I was going to get run over by people walking back and forth in the hall. That's how quickly people move. And so one of the most important things for these companies and the companies that we look for are just pace and rapid innovation. We're no longer in the days, all due respect, for when space programs took 10, 20, 30 years to come to fruition. And we were just talking last night at dinner at the cocktail hour, about NASA plans for the next space telescope. And their plan is to launch that thing in what, 2040, 2045?
If they're lucky, 2045.
Yeah, 2045. I mean, that's not what's happening in the space industry right now. And so that's my first answer, which is things are moving very fast. We're looking for entrepreneurs who are going to, we're a venture fund. We got to have payoff in 7 to 10 years. And we got to find entrepreneurs who can build a business and flip it, ultimately, get it acquired, do an IPO in that time horizon. But it does feel a lot. I lived through my beginning of my career was in the mid-90s in Palo Alto and representing technology companies like, Intel and Apple. That's what I did when I beginning of my career as an IP litigator. This feels just like that. The internet of today is reusable launch. With reusable rockets, now you can get to space incredibly cheaply. You can launch just about anything. just about any mass, just about any size. When Starship comes online, and I encourage everyone to go see a Starship launch down in the south end of Texas, it is unbelievable. That's going to be able to launch 250 metric tons to orbit for $1 million. That's Elon's goal. He told me that repeatedly 5 years ago. And, they still have a little more to do to get to that price point.
Yeah, I know we've asked him about something that's more, 100 times more expensive.
Of course it is. And you're also talking to the sales guys. If when I would talk with the sales team at SpaceX, I was always telling them add a couple zeros.
Yes.
But you're talking about some first flights. There's no doubt. But it'll get down there. It'll get down there. Elon literally wants to get the cost of launch down to the marginal cost of the methane, which is a waste gas, plus the liquid oxygen it'll take to launch Starship into orbit. So once you're able to do that, you're talking about essentially the price of what it takes to FedEx, a kilogram across the United States, same price to get something into orbit in the next few years. When you can do that, you can do anything in space. And so that's my long-winded way of saying, like, the opportunities are huge. People are executing very fast. There are dozens of companies. It is just like the internet days. And with reusable rockets, now you can do anything in space. It's the same question of what would you do with the internet now that you have these pipes? And, there's the Netscapes of the world we're investing in. We're investing right now in the Ciscos of the space economy because we're building a network in space of internet and telecommunications. Eventually we're going to find the companies like, some crazy guy wanted to sell books on the internet and thought that might be a good idea. And everyone thought this guy was crazy. Turns out he now runs a space company in addition to Amazon. And those are the companies that are being founded right now. And the pace is much faster than it's ever been before.
Well, by the way, I first met that bookseller in Seattle about 25 years ago in a coffee shop. First of all, he has the worst laugh of anybody. But he introduced himself. He said, "I'm Jeff Bezos." He said, "I sell books so I can build rockets."
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
So it was pretty cool. But let me follow on. That. By the way, I have to say I'm a big fan of Elon Musk.
Yeah. He's amazing.
He threw me out of his office a couple times.
He threw me out of his office a couple times.
And but I mean, you pointed out, you included, that the SpaceX mafia is running a lot of stuff, including the United States. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, you mentioned that it was because they learned how to do things quickly. But what do you? I mean, I would put you on the spot a little bit, but what do you think about everybody from one particular group now has so much influence, particularly in space, but throughout everything in the U.S. does?
Look, if I'm just focusing from the perspective of a space entrepreneur, a space venture capitalist, nothing could be better than having, Elon Musk in the position that he's in. I mean, he has literally, before he even started the Doge stuff, the first thing he did was set up all of the key people to put into every different organization of the government that was going to help the commercial space sector. Example, someone Jared Isaacman. Mm-hmm. This is the guy, 41-year-old guy, ran Shift 4 payments, became a space nut, has flown twice to space on SpaceX. He's now the nominee to be the head of NASA. Okay, that's one big position. A guy who I met, a long time ago at a lot of the SpaceX launches and one of the Starship launches, Brendan Carr. He was this guy who was hanging out, loved to learn. He was an FCC commissioner. The CFO of SpaceX turned to me and said, if Trump wins in November, that guy's going to be the chairman of the FCC. He's now the chairman of the FCC. And what has he done this week alone? Announced various initiatives to increase the efforts of commercial space, make the licensing easier, make the launches easier, make the number of satellites operating easier. The FCC has a huge role in licensing space. The head of the FAA, he was an arch enemy of Elon Musk. Day one that Trump was elected, that guy resigned. A SpaceX, it's not a SpaceX person, but an Elon sort of pick is going to be the head of the FAA. Same thing within the Pentagon. So what that means for a space entrepreneur, what that means for space venture capital, is the next 4 years are going to be like the years to invest in space, because it is going to be much easier. The licensing is going to be easier. The requirements are going to be easier. And that's just going to accelerate everything. And even if and when the administration changes, that bedrock foundation of what's going to happen in the next few years is going to be there. And look, 80-90% of SpaceX's revenue outside of Starlink is government revenue. Right? You know this, I know this. Government funds a lot of space activity and still does. Now, the DoD and the intelligence agencies are doing a lot more what NASA does, which is they're realizing that if they go with these startups and they go with this commercial space, they're going to have a lot more bang for their buck. And a great example of that is the recent missions to the moon. Firefly, a private company, was just the first fully successful company to land something on the moon, a rover. Lasted for 2 weeks, did all of its missions, accomplished with flying colors, incredible footage that came back from it, an unbelievable, inspirational mission. That was done for $150 million as part of the NASA CLIPS program. And in fact, NASA was able to fund for a fraction of the cost that a straight NASA mission would have cost. NASA was able to fund 10 missions to the moon, right? 10 shots on goal, if you will, to achieve various scientific results. If the DoD and the national intelligence can do the same thing, it's, again, hugely transformational for the space ecosystem and for private companies and startups.
Well, let me switch the topic a little bit. This is certainly related to the last two items, but Mars. Clearly, Mr. Musk intends us to settle Mars. I think it's the coolest thing. Mr. Bezos wants to build space colonies, also cool.
Also cool.
I guess the question is, and I get asked this a lot, I mean, this is a philanthropic thing, at least it seems to be, or a philosophical thing.
To go to Mars, you
mean? To go to Mars, or, building space colonies or whatever. What is the role of the private sector there? I mean, is there money to be made, or is it money to be made in 50 years? I mean, it's kind of an open question. I'd like to get people's opinion on it.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, it's kind of one of the amazing things. When I sat down to interview with Elon for my job, first thing he said to me is a line that he said to a lot of people, which is, I want to die on Mars, just not on impact. Okay? And what I mean by that, he said this to me, what I mean by that is by age 70, he's now what, 53, 54, by age 70, I want to retire on a self-sustaining colony on Mars. That is the mission of SpaceX, okay? The way I'm going to do it is by raising enough capital. And this point, right away, mind you, this is like 2018, 2019. This is when, SpaceX's market cap at $36 billion, pretty good, was twice that of Tesla's. Tesla's was only $18 billion. And Tesla and SpaceX both had almost gone bankrupt, not only back in 2008, but again later on in mid-2015, 2016, 2017. Both of those companies were struggling. People think that Elon just had billions of dollars. No, he made the money by growing these companies. And what he said to me was, I want to launch this Starlink thing, and I need your help to do that in order to make $200 billion in capital so that we can go to Mars. The amazing thing is, you get to SpaceX, there's no secret plan to make money on Mars. There's no business plan. There's no meetings where we talk about the secret diamond mines. People would ask me, are there secret diamond mines on Mars? I mean, why does he want to go so badly? He wants to go to make life multiplanetary. He read the same science fiction that I did when I was a kid growing up, right? About humans adventuring in the stars. And he has a strong conviction that we have to have a plan B. Because his plan A was, I have to save Earth by getting rid of fossil fuels. So I'm going to make electric cars, and I'm going to upset the entire fossil fuel industry by making electric cars. Check. And the next thing I want to do is have a plan B, because if there is a climate catastrophe or an asteroid or a global pandemic or a nuclear war between two former Russian states, I want to be sure that we have a backup plan with a self-sustaining colony on another planet. That's his mission. That's what SpaceX does. And what I love about that is, it's inspiration to a lot of companies. So the companies that we see, that, to go back to our first topic just for a second, we see companies that have these amazing visionary goals. What we used to call in the 90s the big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs, right? You remember that? Good to great.
I think we use stronger words sometimes for that.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But that was the polite version. And so, a lot of these companies are now coming up with these incredible goals to do things throughout the entire solar system. I mean, just amazing visionary things that none of us thought were possible. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so I think a lot of companies are building components that ultimately will get used on Mars. A lot of companies are trying to I think of Astrolab, which is a company building moon rovers that ultimately they want to be able to use on Mars for building things. There are companies that are trying to build communication systems that ultimately could get used on Mars. Companies that are we invest in a company called Zonaspace, which is building a commercial GPS system in low Earth orbit that is far more resilient, much more accurate than at least the commercial version of what you can get from the existing GPS system. New technology, much more proliferated, much higher signal strength. And they want to build that on Mars as well. They have that same vision of doing that for Mars. They're long-term goals. I used to, in the context of a venture fund, I kind of call those. We're on Fund 2 now. Our Fund 1 is fully deployed. We're raising Fund 2. We just did our first close. That's going to be a $100 million fund is our goal. I like to say that those kinds of things like Mars plans are Fund 3, Fund 4, Fund 5 kind of missions. That'll be, Elon wants to establish, have the first human land on Mars in 2029. That's what he and Trump are talking about. I mean, they're saying this out loud. And, people hear it and they don't believe it. That's within this decade, right? And even if he says, well, maybe it won't be 2029, it'll be 2031. Either way, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And he has the president talking about the same thing. And so I think that reality is going to hit us much sooner, and the business opportunities for people trying to, I think the closest that SpaceX has to a specific business plan, or Elon has to a specific business plan for Mars, is to be the Dutch East Indies company of the solar system. The guys who transport all the spices and everything else around the solar system. That's the goal. And there's going to be a lot of companies that benefit from stuff like that.
Well, let me turn to entertainment. But I'll get back to the Red Rock Media.
Yeah.
Wants to acquire exclusive rights for the Mars mission. And what do you think?
What's the story, right?
What's the story here? Do you think this is an opportunity to make a lot of money, or just because people love Mars?
I think look, people love space. So I was the COO of Lucasfilm. I worked for George Lucas, general counsel of SpaceX. And when I started at SpaceX, I got there and I thought, okay, wow, this is great. I never have to deal with producers again. I don't have to deal with agents, distribution deals, and everything else. And 2 weeks later, Tom Cruise and Doug Lyman, the director, come walking through the door. Hey, we want to buy a mission to space, and we're going to film a movie on the ISS. And they're like, who are you? Oh, I was the COO of Lucasfilm. I'm like, damn it. Right? They thought they were going to pull a classic Hollywood maneuver on SpaceX and get them to accept a net profit participation for a ride to the ISS. They were sorely mistaken. And it got me thinking about the media opportunities. And I went to Elon and I talked to him about it. And Elon was literally he said to me, David, our marketing plan consists of wind me up like a monkey and put me on Twitter, and that's our marketing plan. And he said that, and he held true to his word. There's no marketing at SpaceX or Tesla. There's no biz dev. There's no media people. There's none. And so I said to him, look, the human mission to Mars, that is going to be the biggest media event in human history. When Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, 1969, 92% Nielsen share. That means 92% of the televisions on the planet tuned in to watch him take his first step on the moon. A lot of people probably saw. Some of the people saw that. I was a little baby, and but the Mars mission, right? Going to another planet. All due respect, going to the moon is one thing. Going to Mars, that's a whole other thing. For humanity to set foot on another planet, that's a big deal. That is the goal, and it's possible. There's someone, we were talking about this last night. I'm on the board of a group called the Galileo Project, run by Avi Loeb, who's the chair of the astronomy department at Harvard. And the Galileo Project, his goal is to discover technological artifacts of extraterrestrial intelligence. And he's the one who said that Oumuamua, which is this interstellar asteroid that came through in 2017, that he hypothesized that that's possible, that was technological in origin. Everyone went crazy. But he's looking for evidence of that. But one of his theories is that's how you spread out through the galaxy is
when he first said that, I wanted to issue a press release for Breakthrough, and I almost got fired. So, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, look, it's a huge goal, and there's, with current, he says, and what I was going to get to is to say what he thinks is, and he's real smart, and what he says is with current technology and self-replicating machines, you could literally spread throughout the entire galaxy in 100,000 years with current technology. And with more advanced technology, it's even easier. And, Breakthrough has talked about some of those technologies, like, using lasers to accelerate things to a third the speed of light, and sending out, replicating probes throughout the galaxy and get to Alpha Centauri within 30 years. It's pretty exciting stuff. Let me ask you, there are a number of people here that
work internationally and are international. In fact, the conference is sponsored in part by the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Europeans and others don't seem to have the right stuff that Elon and others do, and he wasn't born here. And so, what do you think the problem is with? Well, some people think it's wonderful, but the problem with our colleagues around the world that they can't do this.
You know, I don't know. It's hard to put your finger on it. I mean, it's interesting. I liken it to this. I worked in Silicon Valley for many, many, many years. I recently moved to Los Angeles. But in Silicon Valley, it's one of those things where when you go out to a restaurant in Silicon Valley, in Palo Alto, you're surrounded by people at coffee shops and in restaurants. All they're talking about is the next tech startup. It's VCs and startup founders, and there's this ecosystem. And you can run into everyone and talk to them about your idea and get yourself excited about those. And when I moved to LA, I found the same thing on the entertainment side. It's the entertainment capital world. There's a lot of aerospace as well. But you can't go out anywhere and not talk to people who are doing exciting things with entertainment, and really hustling to make a new idea come to light and come to fruition. It's hard to replicate that. One of the subjects that we're talking about is how do you replicate that here in Arizona? And make the conditions favorable for that. It's tough because it's not like, all due respect, Phoenix is incredible and doing amazing things, and Arizona doing incredible things. It's still not the same as the aerospace industry in Los Angeles, or the entertainment industry in Los Angeles, or the venture capital industry in Silicon Valley. And certainly, it's hard to replicate in the United States. It's proven very, very difficult to do that overseas. One of the statistics I heard recently is that less than 1% of the sort of investable assets out of Europe go into venture capital. That's a very, very, very small number. When endowments in the United States sometimes devote 20, 30, 40% of their endowment to venture, right? So there's a venture ecosystem alone in the United States and individual states that is, far outpaces what the Europeans do. NASA's budget's much bigger than the ESA's budget. The military budget is obviously a lot bigger. There's a lot of differences. And the education system is different. The goals of the education system are different. I think, University of Arizona, ASU both, they're pushing the boundaries and enabling people and giving students the idea that you can go out and create your own company. And, Stanford allows you to drop out, and you don't even drop out. You just take a leave of absence and you go off and start your new company. So that push to take risk, the acceptance of risk, the acceptance that you can fail in order to succeed, are all, I think, important things. And it's not to say we invest in a number of companies in Europe. There's a lot of startups that are doing incredible things, but the advantage definitely goes to the United States.
Let me push on that a little bit, because I think that's an important point. I've worked with Luxembourg, and it was hard to persuade them that they need to understand that companies fail.
Yeah, right.
And I work for a billionaire who's basically runs an investment company.
Yeah, right.
Murray Milner, who interestingly he came from Russia, so he doesn't have a European perspective.
But amazingly made a ton of money in the internet space and making very, very, very smart bets.
He told me that when somebody comes in and wants money from him, and he asked how many times they failed and tried.
Yeah, right.
And he said he never picked somebody that was the first time.
Right.
He said as long as they knew why they had failed, and they gave him a good answer, they said, okay, we hired an idiot. It was my brother-in-law, and I didn't fire him. So I think the issue is, so what do you look for in terms of is it people that have tried and failed? Is it people that are just smart? Or you mentioned that are willing to work their dickens off.
But you see it even in the United States, Pete. Look, you've been part of the, NASA and the military for a long time, and there was a
sadly, yes.
Well, and right? There was a long time they looked at SpaceX like these were aliens, literally, like and with disdain. Even when I was still there, I mean the amount of the terrible things. I'll just say that the entrenched operators, the Lockheeds and Northrops and the military-industrial complex was doing behind the scenes to try to kill SpaceX were shocking. And, even today, right, there's a lot of belief within the U.S. government that, you can't fail. Can't fail in space. And people look down and make fun of the mainstream media, makes fun of SpaceX when one of the rockets blows up. It's like everyone, the Schadenfreude comes out and everyone wants to say, hey, Elon Musk, he failed. That's Elon's mantra. His mantra is, I'm going to launch these things. They're probably going to blow up. We're going to figure out how it blew up. We're going to fix it and do it again. And they do it faster than anybody in the history of the world has ever done. That's how they're so successful. That's how they do it so quickly. That's why that company's now worth $350 billion. And it's because of that. And so I think that there's something very important about what Yuri Milner is saying to people. It's like learning from your failures and then moving fast and moving quickly to solve it is super important for startups, super important for the United States, super important thing that we should be embracing. The U.S. government should be embracing it.
Interestingly, the only other country I've seen that in is Israel.
Oh, yeah.
They have a dynamic space startup community.
And a dynamic venture startup, a dynamic space startup. There's they have dynamic startups across the board. And they definitely embrace that approach. And I think it's super important.
Well, David, I'd like to thank you. And by the way, I will send you those proposals.
Yeah, for sure. The script and the startup.
The script and startup, right.
Okay, perfect.